Welcome to the Growing Further podcast, brought to you by the Green Man Group. I'm your host for today, David O'Mara. Through the Growing Further Innovation Awards, we in the Green Man Group are looking to identify and reward early stage businesses from across the world who are placing innovation and sustainability at the core of their strategies. This podcast is a series of conversations with successful entrepreneurs from a really broad range of businesses who have also placed innovation at the forefront of their businesses and see it as a key part of their success. Today in the Growing Further podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Bobby Healy, who after several really successful chapters in his career is currently dedicating himself to making drone delivery a part of everyday life. Bobby, you are best known at the moment for your work with Manna Drone Delivery, but you started off your career in computer game design. So that's a pretty interesting journey. So tell me, what were the interesting stop-off points along the way?
Computer game design, I wouldn't call it. Back then, it was in the late 80s. It was more just writing code. There was no design.
Right.
You did what the computer was capable of. And that's still the most fun, I would say the best technical work I've ever done. I'm a programmer, and it's hugely enjoyable. No money in it, of course, but great fame for 5 minutes. Billboard top 3, all that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
But didn't really, I mean, video games is a hits-based industry, so it's kind of, you have great fun doing it, but it's a brief career for most people.
That was in Dublin?
No, it was in San Francisco. Well, it was actually Waterford initially and then San Francisco after that.
Are you still a big gamer?
No, I never did. I
No?
never really played games. No, I was more, I was the person that took them apart. That always, took the toaster apart, see how it worked, and games are no different. It's kind of, I had an intellectual curiosity on how they work, how they're built, and that's what brought me into programming, but I was never really played them that much, still don't.
So the late 80s versus what kids are playing with now, I mean, computer game
And
industry is
there's no comparison. What they're playing now are creative stories and art and all sorts of things. The technology is kind of common across them all. So there's no more crack building a game. It's more creative art and production than technology, I think.
Okay. Any of the games you worked on still being played by hardcore computer geeks out there?
No, they're reviewed. You'll find them on YouTube. Slated universally and rightly so. I mean, they were shite games, but technically they were very good. They were kind of ahead of their time, but unplayable, too difficult.
Yeah.
And you'll find them on YouTube. Moonwalker, Running Man, If It Moves, Shoot It, New York Warrior, a bunch of crap games. And I must say, I've dipped in every now and then to see some of the reviews. People are still writing reviews of them. Well, first one was 1987.
Right.
Yeah. It's like I'm 115 years old. But you'll still find reviews on them. So enthusiasts to just review all the games from the 80s. Yeah.
There's a cult following out there.
It's a thing.
Deep in the internet.
It's a thing.
Okay.
It's a thing.
Yeah. Someone might get quite starstruck if they met you from that world. Very
I
cool.
hope not.
And what was your next step after that?
I took a real job in the south of France, building travel technology for a big tech company down there, Amadeus, which was, I didn't know what I was doing really, but I was a pretty good programmer back then. And back then, early 90s, there was money to be made doing that. As a career, it was kind of I would say a pause in terms of learning, but an acceleration in terms of switching from being a pure programmer into being on someone that understood business and problems that could be solved, that could be very valuable to solve, boring problems to solve, I should say. And travel technology, which that company was a travel technology business. I didn't leave there. I built companies in travel technology for another 25, 30 years from that point on until I started Manna. All my businesses have been travel technology, both from an investing point of view and building, founding and growing point of view, travel tech.
So the south of France was your grounding in business, let's say, going from that
couple of years, yeah. Well, I met acquaintances that were not programmers. All my friends were programmers at that stage. I was pure tech, and there I kind of ran into other people that had right brain instead of pure left brain, and I actually founded a business in the south of France with a good old friend, and that was the first business that I founded that I would say used technology to, as a kind of means to build something of value, but really it was a business, not a technology for technology's sake, which is what the games were. And that business, I moved it to Mexico City. The biggest customer we signed was in Mexico City. And so I moved there, and that's where the business really took off and kind of became pretty big. And it was, I would say, I was differentiated in that I was a tech guy. I could write the code. I was writing all the code for it. But at the same time, I was also selling the product and doing all the arm flapping that you do when you're running a tech business.
So you made a comment there about left brain people and right brain people. So talk to me how important it is to get the right blend of people in the business, particularly something that's quite technical.
It's funny. If you ask a right brain person, they'll tell you that answer perfectly well. If you ask a left brain person, they don't know what you're talking about and they'll make something up.
So for people who don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what it means. You know, I don't think I'm particularly brilliant with people, leadership, any of those words that come in the books. I just work hard and I drive the team hard and I like to do things that are interesting for everyone, but with a goal, always with a clear, measurable goal and endpoint. This is where we need to get to, this is what we need to do. And I'd find it difficult to grow a business that didn't have a clear direction, target that was measurable. And my team, you know, in any of the businesses that I've run would be very all left brain as well, I would say, except the sales and marketing team. Yeah. You know, and even there, the strategy is always quite a simple one in SaaS, in enterprise businesses that I've, you know, up to Manna was always enterprise businesses. And in fact, Manna is also an enterprise business. Building enterprise business is obviously about having a product strategy and, you know, product market fit and all the things that go into that, which is left brain. But then influencing the market to believe in you and your product and your team and all that stuff is very much the opposite. It's very positioning, it's nuances, it's guerrilla tactics, I would say, on social and messaging and all that stuff. And actually that is something I'm good at, but only because that's a formula. Okay. It's like it's maths. It's an equation. Right. Yeah, it is. It's measurable. Yeah.
So if you're talking to sales guys, marketing people, is there frustrations when they're trying to get them to communicate your vision and drive for the business, or is that an easy equation to work out between you?
No, it's very difficult to. I've found it very difficult to hire salespeople that are successful. Okay. And it's not their fault usually. I mean, you can find a great salesperson in one business that's a terrible salesperson in another business, and vice versa. I think the marriage of the person and the product are important, and the domain, I think, is important. And there's different types of sales, you know, and the product really and the market determines what type of salesperson you need. So I've never been great at hiring great salespeople, but I don't blame that on myself either. It's just the nature of it. It's environment's very important. So with salespeople, you just have to try your best, bring them on, make their job as easy as possible and hope that they succeed. And you can measure them through amount of sales, of course, but in a lumpy enterprise business where there may only be 2 or 3 sales a year, and one year you might only get 1 and the other year you might get 5. What's the difference between, you know, one year and the other? It's just chance and timing. So I've always found it hard to hire great enterprise salespeople. And I would say out of 20 or 30 in the last 10 years that I've hired, maybe 2 of them are really, really good. And the rest of them, not so good.
And are the 2, are they like, was it Napoleon said, better to have a lucky general than a good general? Is that right place, right time in sales?
Good question. No, I think the 2 that I would have in mind, very different in their approaches, but both won't stop at anything to get the job done, and also have an art of conversation, not salesy conversation, but I've seen them trade blows over the phone with a client, and it's just natural. It just comes to them naturally. And I certainly don't have that. I can tell the story, but telling a story versus closing a deal are 2 completely unrelated things. And what you want in salespeople are people to close. And most people are unwilling or unable to close.
And apart from good salespeople, what are the common themes you've seen in successful businesses? What are the non-negotiables you need to have to get something from early stage to really established?
Just a handful of great people, like a seed a seed team in a company make or break it. It's that first team that define the company's success, I believe. And that team need to be there for the duration, certainly through the transformation into scale of the business. And so, without it being a cliche, it's definitely the people, don't want to be applauding the people, but
Culture.
no, I don't.
No, you
none
don't
of
believe the C word.
No, it's the
But they
it's the
first people in
it's
set
the
the tone.
handful, usually one hand, maybe one and a half hands of people that define the future for the company and the success or not of it. And those people obviously have to be highly motivated, willing to make giant sacrifice, unlimited sacrifice, and they have to be obviously talented, but that's just one part of it. The attitude and willingness to go the full duration no matter what, and bet everything is the key. And the startup people, they make sacrifice, and I don't mean by working later nights and everyone else. They give everything up. They give their family up, their children, their friends, everything. Everything goes.
What did Musk say? High intensity for long hours?
Yeah, but I don't even like the word high intensity. It's obvious, It's like there's no stopping, because the odds are stacked against you. So the way you counteract that is, you make up for it with longer amounts of time working, of course. But I think I don't like to use the word like intensity. It's more sacrifice is the better word. Okay. You never stop thinking about your startup. You're always thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because there's always things that are wrong, and unless you're thinking about it, they won't surface on your radar. They'll just always be wrong. You're always trying to improve. You're always trying to fix things that are broken. You're always trying to identify things that are broken. You never stop. And you need everybody on the team to be thinking like that.
And at what point in time do you kind of look back and say, okay, we're kind of established now? Like what milestones do you look out for?
I've never done that in my life. Like in car trawler, I suppose, I say this quite a bit, and I don't mean in a bad way, but me and Mike ran car trawler for about 15 years, Mike McGurty, and I would say I was bored the last 6 or 7 years, and it was just successful, it was just growing, and to be honest with you, I didn't have any influencing role left. There was nothing I could have done. It was always going to be doing great.
Operating.
Yeah, I was like, and that's not my thing. That's not what I do. And
there's no buzz in that for you?
No, not at all. No, I was bored. I love the people and it's a great business. But I should have been doing something else with my time.
So if you're getting bored, maybe the business has been established and is
successful.
Yeah,
I have a role, for sure. I have a role to go as far as I can go. Now, like, you can transition from the build and the risk and the developing the strategy and the product and all that stuff to an organization to just scaling, right? So you've now, what the important things now are legal and HR and sales. They're not the things of a startup.
Yeah.
And some people like to do that and continue. And some people are like me, they prefer the first stages of the business. But at the same time, I think car trawler was just, because it's in a space like car rental, it couldn't get more boring than that. There's nothing to innovate once you build the distribution layer, the tech, the initial tech. That's being a bit unfair to it, but it's not drone delivery.
Yeah.
And drone delivery is serving $1 trillion+ market. It's going to have a relationship with every household on the planet. There's unlimited things to do. There's going to be layers and layers and layers and layers on top of that. And so I could see myself doing Manna or something like it for 20 years. Whereas if I did another car trawler, which I am with Mealy in a way, it's a decade at most. Whereas there's some breakaway ventures like Manna that just are, there's so much potential in them, you could go forever.
So that car trawler, quite a traditional business, as you say, to Manna. So why did you set up Manna? What problem are you trying to solve with Manna Aero?
First of all, the reason I set it up was twofold. One was I wanted something much bigger than car trawler. There's no point for me anyway of like do another of the same thing or scale or whatever. Like, it's not, there's only so much room on your tombstone, right? So you need, a headline, and car trawler was never going to be it for me. So I wanted something gigantic. First of all, I was saying I'm not going to do anything unless, because you're given a decade of your life, right? And I was 49 when I started Manna. So whatever you're doing in a startup, you need to say, right, this is my next decade. And decades, like, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So you don't just drift into the next thing and do it and see how things go.
So you're ambitious, David.
Well, I wouldn't use the word ambitious. I would say greedy.
Okay. Can be the same thing.
Well, short attention span as well. So it better be fucking attractive for me to give it a decade.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the starting point. And then the second point was
we're just talking about Taylor Swift. So this is your Manna era,
eras or whatever.
You should sell Manna merch for the same price you'd be.
Look, it's a very interesting for a tech person like me. It's a super interesting space. There's flying robots. There's a lot of tech in there. There's obviously aircraft and all of that comes with aerospace engineering. There's robotic software on board, which is really hard. It kind of goes back to the old style programming that I would have been used to. And then there's layers of, marketplace layers, cloud services, apps, and there's all sorts of really interesting components to it. So you're orchestrating many technologies at once that I would say the complexity of it is next level. Like I don't know what to the lay person what it feels like. I know it feels like it's a cool business, but to a tech person, it's incredibly interesting project. So one way or the other, success or fail, it'll have been a great learning experience, which is valuable to me.
So how long has drone delivery been on your radar prior to even setting up Manna?
So it's 5 years old, the business now. And when I thought of the idea, I wasn't aware drone delivery existed. And I just thought of the idea of, well, hey, you know what? I could retrofit this drone with a winch and I could write the code to fly it to my local chippers. Genuine. I said, geez, that'd be good crack.
Yeah.
And I'll do that anyway because it's interesting. And not as a business, but it was good crack. And so I built that, and it was and as I was doing that, I was starting to formulate, this could turn into a business. I could start to blah, 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 and I'm writing notes, and then I'm doing research, and then lo and behold, turns out Amazon were trying to do this, Google were trying to do this, and there was a handful of other smaller companies that have since failed. They were also trying to do it. So I wasn't the first one to think of the idea.
Did you get a bag of chips delivered before you set up the business?
Unfortunately, it was illegal to do it. So okay. I went to the local chippers and I had the conversation, and it was obviously they thought there was something wrong with me. I still go back there once a month for my bag of chips, and they see me in the news now, so they know. Yeah, well, so there was a lot of existential risks at that point. There was the tech, obviously, the unit economics of the tech. So no point building tech if the economics don't work. If you can't be more economically viable than using road-based delivery, there's no point, because customers just want the chips. They don't care if it's by the road, by a rocket, or by a drone. And then the regulatory was a big one. It's like, okay, how does this all work? And who says, who gets in the way here? And turns out it's the aviation regulator. And it's not that they get in the way, but there was a risk there. Yeah.
That was the big hurdle initially to get buy-in from them? And
it was a qualification. It was a gating factor. I had to say, look, the tech I felt I could deal with, the economics, I would say I felt reasonably confident that the economics could be very good at scale. And then the gating of the regulator was, look, a quick conversation with the Irish regulator, the Irish Aviation Authority, gave me enough confidence to say that, look, they were willing to consider it. There were kind of regulations and laws starting to happen in the EU, and it was going in the right direction. Now, timing, the thing that breaks most startups like this is timing. You go too early and you're trying too hard and the gate's not open yet, and then somebody else comes in right as the gate opens. And there's a famous structural advantage in creating value is in either regulatory capture or regulatory unlock. And regulatory unlock, my business before Car Trawler benefited from that, where regulations were created to prevent monopolization of a certain market, and which created a regulatory opportunity, which I went into. Whereas regulatory capture is when you use the laws to stop anyone else competing with you, like OpenAI are trying to do. And in our case, it was regulatory unlock. So it looked like Europe was going to create the regulations required to allow this.
Okay.
So when I got a sniff at that, that's where I really saw the big opportunity. I saw that, look, there's a market that doesn't exist today, but that's about to exist. And anyone that has a product at the right time for that market when it opens up, it's going to be incredibly valuable. So that was, I would say, the biggest turbo boost for me was the meeting with the IAA that told me this was on the radar and was coming. Yeah.
So you didn't get a flat out no. There was a
Quite the
EU-wide
opposite.
drive, and then
I got
they
a
were
very
open to it.
enthusiastic. For an organization, it's a regulator, conservative one, full of aviation people. You wouldn't expect a productive conversation with a startup person that wants to share the airspace with 737s.
Yeah.
But it was the opposite. It was very proactive. It was very supportive, I would say. It wasn't like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. It's not, it's never going to be easy in a regulated space. But there was, I felt very clearly right up to the top of the IAA that there was a willingness to be supportive, which was absolutely key. I wouldn't have started the business without that.
Yeah. And so what does the future look like? Let's say if we fast forward 15, 20 years down the line, are we going to see drones commonly flying around our skies?
15 years, you're going to see at the end of this year in Dublin. We're already in Dublin 15. Our plan will put us in a large part of Dublin by the end of the year. Many suburbs, I can't name them yet, but definitely 5 or 6 large suburbs in Dublin, serving about 500,000 people by the end of the year. Really, we're about now, we've proven the economics, we've proven that it works, we've proven that people love it, we've proven that we can get profitable on a per flight basis. And so the next phase for us is just grow revenue to kind of say, all right, we want to get the company to demonstrate that it can cut and paste operations in cities and generate, X million dollars in revenue, whatever it is, but demonstrate an ability to grow revenue. Because we're very small now in terms of revenue. We just have profitability at the flight level. And by the end of this year, early next year, we want to start to demonstrate some proper growth, revenue growth. And then our ambition then is to go to every large city in Europe as quickly as we can. And that's when we'll really start the real fundraising journey.
And before we get into the fundraising side of it, who are your ideal customers, and do you have targets in mind?
Our product is delivery as a service. And essentially we're operating a cargo airline, a small cargo airline, a highly fragmented one, obviously, with lots of aircraft. But the key KPI for us is utilization of the aircraft. So we need that aircraft it can do 8 flights an hour, and we want it to be doing 8 flights an hour. So therefore you got to fill those flight slots, just like seats on an aircraft. We want to fill them to be as profitable as possible. So therefore we want every hamburger that flies out of big brand name restaurant.com to be on our aircraft. So that means we need to support the restaurant's direct business, and we need to support the aggregators, the DoorDashes, the Just Eats, the Uber Eats of this world, the Deliveroos and so on.
So are they your competition, or are they potential partners?
Right now are our partners. We've signed 2 of them. I can't name the 2, but they'll be announced soon enough. We see ourselves as a hugely positive disruption for them, where we can reduce their own cost per delivery. We can take all that CO2 out of the environment. We can take those dangerous road miles off the roads, delivering trivial goods, and we can give them a product that's sensationally good for their customers and better unit economics. So they should see us, and they do, as very positive. But at the same time, arguably they could say, Jesus, if you grow up and you become really big, you could come around and eat the hand that fed you, and you could compete. That's not our intention. No, our intention is to just have a meaningful relationship with every household in every suburb that we can get to, and build on that with other use cases. So we want to deliver, as we do now, defibrillators, pharmacy, groceries, everything. But right now we deliver ice cream, coffee, and takeaway food. But it really should be everything that a household needs. Parcels, post, you name it. So we want to build, relationship with the household first and foremost.
Yeah. That defibrillator bit is interesting. So we see a case for that being used in emergency health situations.
Yeah, well, we do it now. I mean, thankfully it's never been used, but there's cases like that, emergency cases, EpiPens as well. It wouldn't work in Ireland but work in some markets where you could deliver blood as well. There's all sorts of emergency use cases that if our infrastructure is already in place, it's already there, there's no reason the emergency services shouldn't be able to somehow use our service. Like the way your phone can be used for an emergency call, we would like to think our tech would be used in the same way for whatever case is beneficial to society. And an obvious one is a defibrillator. But it's not to say, like most of the time, anyone that needs a defibrillator, by the time it gets there, it's too late, right? Yeah. But no harm trying, right? Yeah. So I think it's a good example of use of the tech. But other cases be like Meals on Wheels, particularly with elderly people. There's lots of reasons they need to leave their house, but we could help them out by bringing the stuff to them, like we did in Moneygall for our first operation. There's all sorts of use for the tech, but first we have to bring it to be a viable infrastructure on its own. Yeah. So that we're not looking for state support, we're not looking for handouts, that it's a profitable business on its own, and then it can be deployed for other cases.
Okay. And before we move on, just is the ideal location a suburban location, or is there more rural, isolated areas? Is there going to be a good future for drone delivery?
Again, it goes to utilization. So to maximize your utilization, you start off with high density suburbs. So like Dublin 15, there's 43,000 air codes within 4 kilometres of our base. So you get high utilization, you get high volume, so therefore high utilization.
As you fill your 8 slots pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the weekends, we don't have any slots available. Weekdays, we have a few, but as we're growing, we get a repeat cohort of customers. So utilization numbers are easy to hit there. And you start to, just like, again, like an airline would, when you look at a route map, you say, are there enough passengers in that city pair for it to work, for me to dedicate aircraft to that? So as we expand and as we grow, we'll certainly start at the tier 1, the Goldilocks suburbs, where it's 100, 200,000 people and up. But over time, we'll start to say, okay, who else? And then you think about towns, disconnected towns of 20, 30,000 people, all the way down to disconnected towns of 1,000, 5,000 people, all very doable, because in the end, there's no human labor associated with this. It's time of aircraft and it's distance flown. So there's a bit of a physics problem with battery energy density, where it's hard to fly 20 miles with a copter design like ours, but over time we'll do the engineering required. So it's no further work for us to fly. Instead of 5 kilometers, we could fly 25 kilometers. It's straightforward. A fixed wing aircraft, it's kind of well-known thing to do. So we would see definitely all of those, what I would say, slightly disconnected communities, the ones that don't have all of the stores that they need or all the services that they need. We could bridge that gap for sure. But it's not. It's more in the 10-year plus timeline. It's not in the 3 to 5 year.
Okay, and 10 years plus, you want to see this, not just Ireland, obviously, but you're going to enter Europe relatively soon.
No, we've entered Europe. We have an operation opening next month in another European market. We haven't announced that either, but it's the aircraft are there. We're getting everything ready, and we'll announce that shortly. So one more European market this year. We're live already in Texas and the USA, but the real growth for us won't come till next year, when we really throttle up, and it'll be obviously everywhere in Ireland, and it'll be a handful of European markets all in parallel.
And how many are in the team at the moment?
120.
Wow, okay. So you alluded there to raising capital. It's a pretty capital intensive business, I guess. You're building and designing and building the machines, the hardware yourself?
We design everything ourselves that's kind of required in our space, and we build them as well we have a facility in County Offaly, and I would say we'll continue to build, certainly for the foreseeable future, ourselves in Ireland. And as we scale, we don't need many aircraft. We need probably for next year another 200 or 300 aircraft. It's not a lot of aircraft. But future phases, we'll be needing, anywhere between 100 and 500 a day coming off the assembly line. And I'd love to think that we can build that in Ireland, but we'll probably outsource some of it, like sub-assemblies, kind of propulsion, battery, stuff like that. But that's just scaling manufacturing, which has been done many times before. So I don't expect that to be particularly hard, or shall I say very hard, but unpredictable. I don't expect to be unpredictable. And fundraising, it's the type of business that's serving such a large space that the incumbent advantage also is very strong. In other words, if you get to a market first, your incumbent advantage is significant and it'd be very hard to displace or compete with us once we're already somewhere.
Okay.
So therefore, there's a good reason to go in parallel as quickly as you can. And with that mode, I won't, people used to use the word blitz scaling when interest rates were zero.
Right.
Now you have to do with a bit of sobriety. But there's still a good reason to scale very quickly, and anything that scales very quickly, it's going to be burning cash always. It'll generate, of course, like a location for us when we open it up is generating a profit after 12 months. It's contribution positive. But if you're scaling up 500 locations, you need a ton of capital, both for the capital needs, the aircraft needs, and for OpEx as you spin up the location.
And what's the environment like at the moment for raising cash? Is it difficult out there?
Yeah, I mean, the private capital industry is still in shock at the, interest rates and realignment of everything, and kind of, I would say, massive bubble bursting, irrationality gone out the window. So it's not easy for most startups unless you're in the AI space. But a well-run, good business in a good space with strong unit economics can always raise capital.
Yeah.
It's just terms are not as sexy as they used to be, but it's not going to be a problem.
And in an Irish context, are there decent supports available for startup businesses in general?
For startups, yes. For companies our scale, less so. But yeah, I would always say that Ireland is one of, if not the best places in the world to start a business. It's a business friendly government, business friendly constructs around that, like Enterprise Ireland, IDA, so on. English speaking, geographically well located, and plenty of capital here at the kind of seed and early stage. And we're evidence of that. I mean, we raised 40 plus million already, but in Dublin, no problem. Well, no problem. It's never easy to raise money, but look, here we are. And we're a company that has every right to lead the world. We're second now in the world to Google in this space. And it's a capital intensive space, yet here we are, right? So that's proof positive that Ireland is a great place to do it. What I would say though is that we're definitely a little thinner as the altitude increases. And so Series B onwards, so when you're needing to raise the 30, 40, 50, 100 million and so on, there's really nothing like that in Ireland. And there we have big disadvantage. And
making that leap from Irish focused business to trying to go to Europe and global, is that
It'll always be an Irish business. It'll always be Irish HQ'd. It'll just operationalize in other countries. So we'll have teams in Paris and Madrid and Berlin or whatever. You're doing aircraft maintenance, deployment, operating the aircraft, all that stuff. But the IP and the HQ and, I won't say the brains of the operation, but the people that make the decisions are in Ireland, for forever. I don't see that changing. Manufacturing arguably could go elsewhere. But the manufacturing of our goods it isn't about cost at all. It's about predictability, quality, auditability, all that stuff. So there Ireland does do pretty well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but certainly HQ, R&D, all that stuff will be in Ireland.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But to make that leap to a global business, you need capital outside of Ireland for your second round, and your team will have to grow, and the expertise that you need. Mm-hmm. It's a new area, so do you have to look very far afield to get that?
So expertise, no. There's buckets of expertise in Ireland to scale a business. Like Irish people and Irish universities are as good as anywhere else. There's no reason we can't find everyone we need here. We can import some people, of course, experts. Like, for example, my chief engineer, which is an aerospace title, is Seattle-based. Okay. Israeli guy living in Seattle. There's certain skill sets that are very hard to find in Ireland, but those are the really niche ones. Yeah. No, I would expect most of our team as we grow, we can source them locally. Yeah. That's not a problem. But the real growth for us will be the operations growth, which will be market by market. So we'll be looking for a French person in France, a German person in Germany to lead that up. So think Uber Eats or Vodafone, or one of those things where each country is a separate operation, really, with its own P&L, with its own management team, all that stuff, which is what our model will be. But then HQ being really R&D, engineering, strategy, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
commercial. So shared services is what I would say. So that's the model. So that'll be the Ireland part. And then each country will have its own, P&L, its own operating entity. And there may be differences about, different countries because of the scale of them.
Yeah.
Like USA, for example, you might break that up by state or by, East Coast, West Coast, whatever. But no lack of talent here.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. You touched on it a couple of times about AI. So for people who are non-technical, who are watching or listening to this, how is that going to impact or help your business, first of all, and then you can talk about maybe the general world, what it's going to look like in your opinion with the impact of AI coming down the track?
Yeah, things like how did the mobile phone impact businesses? It gave everybody the same advantage at the same time. Firstly, so it's only really a disadvantage. New disruptive tech is only a disadvantage for companies that don't embrace it early and in the appropriate way.
They find themselves playing catch up.
Well, some are just saying this is how we work.
Yeah.
This is, I spent a year in IBM, doing knowledge transfer, and IBM's a super company, really great company. But at the time, they were going through this phase where this is not the IBM way was an okay thing to say.
Right.
And so you can't ever say anything like that. You always have to be willing to disrupt yourself and change internally. And what AI means for a company like us is, sure, there's some use cases for AI on board the aircraft, right? Object detection, safety, that kind of stuff. But that's marginal. The real use for AI is it makes your marketing team much more productive. It makes your programmers, the guys that write code, much more productive. You have a much wider, like every programmer can do a much wider set of things, different technologies. Often a programmer has been more and more actually with the advent of frameworks like UIs, React, all that stuff. Programmers have been dedicated to a certain scope of area, like you're either a back-end programmer, front-end programmer, or database programmer, whatever. What AI does is flattens that again and rolls it all up on any programmer that knows logic. You can do everything.
Okay.
Like you can do everything. And I'm a programmer. I still write loads of code. And I would have been, I kind of intentionally went into Java and back end stuff, so high performance server stuff, because I enjoyed it and it's kind of very left brain. And now I can write front end code. I write a lot of database code. I write all sorts of code that would have I could have written them before. It would have taken me months to learn the framework. Yeah. And now ChatGPT or Claude does all that for me. It doesn't write better code, but it writes a lot of code very quickly. So back to my point, the company, AI will have a meaningful productivity boost for companies that embrace it quickly and in the appropriate way. And for everybody else, they'll just be at a disadvantage to those companies.
Yeah. For general life, let's say, for, my parents sitting there wondering what the hell all this talk about AI is, how is our life going to be much different in 10, 15 years' time?
Maybe not for your parents, but for you, it will be. Your car, for example, you won't need a steering wheel pretty soon. That's a big deal. Yeah. And if you look at the recent, like the Transformer GPTs, large language models, self-driving cars, for example, have been, Waymo have been doing it for such a long time, over 10 years, invest a ton of money, and then along comes LLMs. So they were using deep neural networks, really, really hard machine learning stuff that didn't really work the full way. Now with probability models, so LLMs essentially, or transformers, the self-driving car people, the autonomous car people, suddenly have a new tool set to actually do it the way a human brain would do it. Yeah. And now, like Waymo have opened their service up to the full public in San Francisco. You can get an autonomous car there, just like a taxi, and matter of time before that tech is starting to get installed on mainstream vehicles in the US. And I would say 5 to 10 years in Ireland, every car will come with autonomous driving. So that's a direct translation from AI to no more road deaths in Ireland. That's huge. And even more simplistically, less traffic jams, because AI cars don't hit the brakes, don't go too fast, don't go people's arses. They drive in a really
rubberneck.
Yeah, but the result, it has no waves in traffic. So there's all sorts of benefit. But then the other one is, cancer diagnosis. Breast cancer particularly has been proven now that AI is like way more effective than doctors at identifying early stage breast cancer. And there's all sorts of other use cases where combination of, again, AI that we all know, like ChatGPT, to deep learning tech like DeepMind in the UK. These are technologies that have advanced so much now that can really now start to be applied to domains where people were really the top of the pyramid, doctors and consultants were. And these AIs are better than the best consultants in the world. And obviously, they're the cost of the electricity to operate them. So I'd say for your generation, and to a lesser extent, my generation, there's hope of a lot of cures for a lot of diseases that have plagued us for millennia. And that's good news. And then there's all sorts of other stuff like education. That takes a long time to fix, but there's no reason why teachers, and this might be controversial, but an AI is a far better teacher than a teacher. The AI may not have the emotions and the emotional intelligence of a teacher, but if you want scale education, which is very difficult, then I would say that there's a way to augment existing teachers with AIs that could be really, really useful for society. Doctors, there's no reason doctors can't be replaced or augmented by AIs. The list goes on and on. But AIs are there now to be able to do that. It'll just take decades for society to embrace them in that way, I think.
The implementation, and the acceptance of it. Yeah, interesting. And so finally, something we ask everyone, so the theme of Growing Further is innovation. So what does that innovation word mean to you, and how important is it to you in your businesses?
I mean, tech is always, I suppose, any tech person or tech business is by its nature innovating, because you're inventing products, you're creating products out of thin air. I think what it also means is, innovation is sometimes forced down the necks of the participants, I would say. So there's definitely a lot of areas where innovation is pushed back on, particularly government services. If you think about government, inefficient government, infrastructure, construction, health service. Look at all those big functions of government and society that suffer from a lack of innovation. And so to me, innovation, the easy description is, we're very innovative. We do innovative things all the time. That's the obvious, right?
Yeah.
I think a better framing of it is, how much better would the world be if sectors that are impervious to innovation somehow became receptive of innovation? And I would look particularly at the health sector, the education sectors, government.
Civil service.
Well, civil service, that seems like a derogatory term sometimes. I have good friends working in the civil service. They work their asses off. But it's just a gloop. It's just a gigantic size of them, enormous bodies of people that it's just difficult to...
It's the big tanker that moves slowly.
It is, an innovation kind of sometimes is a high risk venture as well. God forbid you stick your hand up and say you want to take some risk. So when you say innovation, to me, it's a wish, and it's a wish that we can figure out ways to get these giant organizations and functions of society, I would say, as much as government, to embrace it better. And I think that starts with education. It starts with the people that are going into high babies now and first class and second class. It starts there, I think, and ingrained. So it's generational, multi-generational. But I think we know enough about tech at this point to know that it's not a fad, that it can genuinely improve things. So I think if you think multi-generationally, then I think government has a role there. And I think we should have a minister for innovation, a minister for technology, a minister for infrastructure. You could have dedicated functions of government that's job is to think generationally around how do we embed innovation and technology into all areas of society for the longer term. That's how I think about it.
It's a great note to finish. Bobby Healy, thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here.
I just want to thank you for tuning in today, and really hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. To find out more information, please check out growingfurther.io or follow Growing Further on LinkedIn.